Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first ever SCSP AI Expo. My name is Karina Barao, and I am an Associate Director at SCSP. I am delighted to be joined by Elizabeth Kelly, Director of the U.S. AI Safety Institute, and Ali Ilott, Director of the UK AI Safety Institute. They both are playing key roles in standing up the world's first AI safety institutes. And today, we'll be diving into their experiences over the past year and the road ahead for their institutes. First question for both of you. What are the top priorities for your respective institutes in their first year? And tell us about what you see as success and the challenges you've been facing. I'll start with you, Ali.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here. It's also good to go first because I think we'll end up with quite similar sounding missions and goals for the course of this year. And so I get to claim novelty. So what are we doing in the UK's AI Safety Institute? We're a part of the UK government. And what we are trying to do is assemble the right technical expertise inside government to be able to run tests on frontier AI systems to understand the risks that those systems might pose. We're not a regulator. This is a technical exercise that we're engaged in. And we're developing tests across a range of domains. So we are testing for potential misuse of AI systems. Could someone use a frontier AI system to conduct a chemical or biological attack? Could someone use an AI system to conduct a cyber attack? But we're also testing for the potential societal impacts of using these models. Use this. Better?
Good.
How far back do I need to go to be audible?
I can barely hear you, so.
Okay. UK AI Safety Institute, new organization in government. That's good. It's reassuring to have thumbs up. And what we are doing is building a technical team in government who are capable of testing frontier AI systems to understand the risks that they might pose. And what do I mean by tests? So we're developing tests that look at misuse. So chemical or biological misuse. Could someone use an AI system to build a weapon? We're also looking at misuse as it relates to cyber. Could someone use AI to conduct a cyber attack? But beyond misuse, we're also looking at the potential societal impacts of these systems, the potential risks arising from their autonomy, so the ability to set and execute goals without coming back to the human for control. And we test the safeguards in these systems as well. And that is the organization that we are building. We were announced at the time of the Bletchley Summit, which was at the start of November. And one of the things coming out of that summit that the UK government hosted at Bletchley was an agreement from some of the countries and companies in attendance that they would work together on exactly this type of government safety testing of their systems. The Safety Institute is where we are putting that into practice. And if I think about the progress we've made since launching about 9 months ago, we've assembled that technical team and we've started running these tests. So in January, we got access to one of the big frontier models before it was released. We could run our tests on that model before it came out and then give feedback to the developer. And part of what we're doing here is developing tests on a range of national security concerns, which the state is really well placed to advise companies on. And part of what we're doing is informing government better. Because if you imagine what it's like being in government at the moment and thinking about AI, this frontier that just keeps progressing, it's very, very hard to substantiate questions about the risks that AI might pose. So we're bringing an empirical approach to trying to measure what these systems can do. And what are our goals over the course of the coming year? Of course, we want to get better and better at our technical work and keep building out the size of our technical team. We also want to have a better conversation about kind of standards. So we're developing these tests. What are we actually testing for? Standards feels like a space that we need to get into. But the other big thing that will happen is the internationalization of this effort. So we signed an MOU with the US Safety Institute at the start of April, and we've got the Korea Summit coming up, and then the France AI Summit beyond that. I think the big thing that happens over the course of this year is we see other governments investing in developing this type of technical capability. How do you understand what risks AI systems might pose and start working together on that?
Elizabeth.
I will keep it short because, as Ali said, there is some overlap, which is part of why our partnership was so natural. So we were announced by the vice president at Bletchley Park back in November, but we really got started this February when I and other key members of the leadership team were released. Our mission is similar, to advance the science of AI safety, and in so doing, build trust and spur innovation. Those of you who may have heard Secretary Raimondo speak yesterday, or my boss, Secretary Locascio, know that it's really the Commerce Department's North Star, and part of why our home at Commerce and at NIST is such a natural fit. We've been heads down as a team getting out all of the many deliverables that were given to us by the president's executive order. But really, we're focused on how do we build this institute as a long-term asset for the country and for the world. As Ali said, we are similarly focused on testing. That's one of our 3 key pillars. We want to make sure that prior to the deployment of any frontier AI model, we are testing those models to make sure that they cannot be misused. They couldn't enable a more effective cyber attack or facilitate development of a biological weapon, or exacerbate any number of other harms that are possible as we see these models really increase in capability. And that's part of why we think our work is so important. But we know that we can't do it alone. And really, we view our job as helping facilitate an ecosystem of testing and evaluation so that there's many actors, both the companies and nonprofits, who are helping make sure that we are all advancing AI safety together and improving our testing, improving our research, because there are so many open scientific questions. That's part of why we are really prioritizing putting out a lot of different pieces of guidance to spur the broader community. So it's not just enough to do the testing and say, okay, this is what we found. We want to bring everyone else with us and take advantage of their knowledge and insights. And so we've said publicly we'll be releasing guidance on what testing and evaluation of frontier models should look like, on what risk mitigation should be. It's not just enough to say we've identified this problem. How do we actually know which mitigations work? How do we evaluate which mitigations are effective? And again, help move the science forward. We're also doing a lot of work on synthetic content. One of our EO taskings was to release a report out just a couple of weeks ago, overviewing the landscape of what is robust and reliable watermarking. How do we detect content that is artificially generated? How do we prove what content is actually not artificially generated? And that's a lot of the work that we're doing at NIST and at the Safety Institute, working with our partners across government to really try and operationalize that so every agency is adhering to those best practices. Last but not least is the research component. This is really NIST's DNA, their bread and butter, picture metaphor. And so we're incredibly excited to work with the community on developing better tests, better mitigations, really pushing the frontier forward as we try and keep pace with just the exponential growth that we are seeing in AI and that we expect to continue seeing. We've been supported in our work by the AI Safety Institute Consortium, 280 members drawn from civil society, academia, the frontier labs, industry verticals like healthcare and financial services. I'm guessing there's a decent number of members in the audience now. And we're really excited to work with them to help push forward in all of these questions. We're also likewise incredibly excited to work with all of our allies and partners, most especially the UK following the recent signing of the MOU. Our goal is really to have a network of safety institutes where we're all bringing forward different pieces of expertise. And so we're not duplicating the efforts of our colleagues in other countries, but able to bring forward the work that we're doing and help advance AI safety globally while creating aligned and interoperable standards. And we're building out the team to do just that. And I think we'll have a lot more to say in the coming months.
Ollie, you mentioned the agreement signed on April 1 on the science on AI safety. Can you go a little bit into the genesis of that agreement and what are your expected outcomes and goals for it?
We haven't actually compared notes on what that process was like. Obviously, we signed a long document at the end of it, after some negotiations. So I think really the genesis of it was the launching of the 2 safety institutes at about the same time. So we launched our safety institute. 2 days later, you launched the safety institute. The language used at the time was that they would work in lockstep. So these were always envisaged as 2 organizations which should reach a kind of deep degree of cooperation. what we spend the intervening months doing is figuring out, okay, how do we formalize that as an MOU? How do you go from lockstep to some shared work streams that we can take forward? And really the key term, I think, in the MOU, and we published a fact sheet alongside it, which gives some more detail, the key term in the MOU is interoperable. That's really what we're trying to get to. The point where we're working off a shared understanding of what the standards are that we should be judging the safety of systems by. A shared set of tests, and we included in the MOU a commitment to do a joint testing run to see if we can run these tests together. And then also a shared understanding of each other's research. So Elizabeth mentioned the research that NIST is doing. We're also launching kind of foundational research from our Safety Institute as well. And that is an effort that we want to collaborate on. So that's a little bit about where I think it came from, which is really just from the genesis of the organizations and a bit more detail on what we're looking to work together on.
I would agree with everything that Ollie said. And I think there's a couple of real advantages to this partnership besides the fact that we get to hang out a lot. I think that we are really able to sort of step up both of our games in terms of what the research and development looks like, what is good and aligned testing, and just bring so many amazing minds to bear in a really collaborative way, which while we may be jealous of your 100 million pounds, it's nothing compared to the huge amount of money that the companies are spending. And we really need to make sure that we are pooling all of our resources internationally to keep pace. And in addition, I think there's a huge advantage for innovation if we're able to have aligned and interoperable testing, aligned standards across the globe. We want there to be a level global playing field, shared definitions of safety. And I think our partnership is a key step towards that.
And to that previous point, I did ask them how many times they have been on a panel or discussion so far, and we're at about 4 or more. So let's drill deeper into AI safety. So I think the big question on our minds, and for those in the audience today, is whether AI standards should be globally harmonized or tailored for domestic needs. So what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think the impact on innovation is if we have domestic or global harmonized standards?
I think there are huge benefits to, as much as possible, having globally aligned standards. Obviously, I think of it in concentric circles. There are countries like the UK where we may be aligned on most things, and there's other countries where we may have fewer points of common ground, but still really important points of common ground. Like, we don't want AI to be used in development of a biological weapon. And so that's a useful frame. At the same time, I think, we have sort of set this principle in the G7 Code of Conduct and other fora that, each country should really be thinking about its own companies, and that, we know there will be areas of disagreement even as we really strive for as much harmony as possible.
I agree with that totally. The only thing I'd add is I think it's important not to overlook just how much work is left to get to the point where there are standards, let alone then asking the question about, okay, are these good enough to internationalize? We are not currently today at a point where there is a list that you can say how widely this should be applied. And I think what's happening between our safety institutes and in time with other governments as well, we're going to find that doing that technical work is better if we are collaborating. So it's not the case that every country cooks up their answer and then checks if they are happy with other people's. I think the process of getting there will be collaborative because it is difficult.
And I think this next question impacts many in the audience. What are the opportunities for organizations and individuals who are interested in AI safety and testing, who want to be involved and help your institutes?
Please come work at the UK's AI Safety Institute. We issue visas. That's serious. You can fly to London. It's a great city. What are the opportunities? Loads of opportunities. So I think sometimes, and this picks up on the tail end of your last question, which we didn't address, sometimes people want to characterize AI as a kind of a binary or trade-off between innovation and thinking about safety. And that's just obviously a false dichotomy. There is no other technology where that is the framing that we apply to it. No one says, do you want to be good at building cars, and thinks that that's a different question to whether or not you're good at building safe cars. And I think what we're going to see in the coming years is that as the systems get more and more powerful, these questions of AI safety become more and more interesting and have greater and greater public salience. And at the moment, there's work taking place in the labs, there's work taking place now in governments. But what I think this looks like at maturity is that there are many, many more third parties doing great safety work as well. So we haven't got a consortia, we've got 22 partnerships. Our partnerships are mainly about people helping us build our evaluation suite. What does that look like at maturity? You really want there to be lots of third-party companies that are making a profit or going bust on their ability to do this safety work. So your question is, what does it look like if you're someone who wants to get into this world? Do come and work at the UK Safety Institute or at the US Safety Institute, or you can work on the labs. But I think the thing we'll see in the coming years is also more and more third parties doing some of this work as well.
I would underscore a couple of points that Ali said. One, I think the point about safety leading to trust, which leads to innovation, cannot be repeated too many times. And I think we need to start seeing levels of investment in safety that are keep pace with what we're seeing in terms of the development of these frontier models. And I'm really excited for that to happen, and excited by the number of students in PhD programs across the country that are really starting to see AI safety as a field that they want to lead in. Because NIST is an open, transparent organization, my email is on the internet. And I can tell you I have gotten many, many emails from students who are eager to intern with that. I think that's great. In terms of how to get involved, one, come work for us. If you're a U.S. citizen, we don't even have to issue a visa. It's much more straightforward. Get involved with the consortium. We've got 280 members, 5 working groups, 15 task forces. So many ways to be involved there, and I think we're really looking forward to that. And in addition, we want to get comment from everyone in this room, from broader community, on all the pieces of guidance we put out, on our rules for testing. Only by working in partnership with all of you will we get the balance right and really spur the robust ecosystem of third parties, which we think is so important. And so we're excited for that partnership.
Speaking of students and talents, we do have a talent marketplace going on right now. But how are your institutes ensuring you have that right mix of talent across AI development, across safety and testing and research, but also the policy expertise to actually push these things forward?
So I'll start. One, I think we are very fortunate to be housed at NIST, which obviously has an incredible track record over 100 years, multiple Nobel laureates, fantastic scientists who have really been doing great work on AI for a long time, leading with the AI RMF, which is adopted by businesses and government partners globally. And so I think we're building from a really strong base. And we've been focused on making a lot of hires, certainly on the technical side, bringing in engineers who understand how to evaluate these models, as well as people who have real policy expertise in the specific verticals around cyber, around bio, around societal harms. And so partnering those subject matter experts with people who know how to operate in government, how to get things done, how to procure, and that sort of marriage of talent, I think, is already beginning to show a lot of real results, and we're excited to continue it going forward.
So getting this talent into government is really, really hard. When we got a chair called Ian Hogarth, who comes out of the private sector. He did a tech startup. He now does VC for investing in deep tech. Ian was appointed as our chair, and he did this Twitter thread, X thread, and it ended with a Google form saying, "Come work at the UK's AI Safety Institute." Or we didn't yet have that branding. The government does not normally do its recruitment through a Google form. But if you want to get this talent, you have to show that you're a slightly different thing. And we had literally thousands of people apply through that form. And we built our own system for running recruitment and onboarding people, a different set of interviews to the ones government normally runs. And we started to see those people coming through. And today we've got a technical team of 30 to 35. Someone new has started whilst I'm in the US, so I get to go home and meet a new colleague. And those are people with a machine learning or AI researcher background or software engineers helping us build this testing suite. And why have they come here? The most important thing is having a sense of mission. Like, we are able to say, we are a government organization. We care about a set of risks which nobody else covers, in particular those national security risks. And we're really clear about what it is that we're doing. We're looking at the frontier, and really just only at the frontier. And we're building a set of tests so that we can anticipate what AI systems might be capable of tomorrow. And the government has an early warning system as these capabilities develop. And I think that by showing people that we are not just a kind of another bit of government. I've been in government for years. I love government. That's an important signal to send, and having the right mission. And then, final point, hiring some great senior people that people want to come and work with. So we hired Jeffrey Irving, who ran the scalable alignment team at DeepMind. We've hired Professor Chris Summerfield, who's a cognitive neuroscientist and one of the earliest hires into DeepMind. We've got Professor Yaron Gal, who's a machine learning professor from Oxford. So you can say to someone, come join government, we've got a really clear mission, and come learn from these brilliant people, and people come.
That's awesome. And you both have very different experiences that led you to where you are today in standing up your individual institutes. What is one piece of advice you would give to young people in the audience today for whether they're juggling careers or still trying to figure out their own path? What would you want to instill in them?
I'll do a shameless plug for working in government. Obviously, the UK government, in my experience, but I assume it transfers over. I did not start out working in government, but I came across about 7-8 years ago. And within 18 months, I was in a room doing negotiations for Brexit. A year later, I was writing a paper about why we should lock down the country in response to this new COVID thing, and then ran the government's COVID strategy. And then I had 3 years with a desk outside the Prime Minister's office as the number 2 and number 10, and now I get to do this thing. There is no other employer that lets you take a run at such interesting projects, and to do so with a real feeling of public service with you and all of your colleagues. So if you are a young person thinking about where you might go, that's my shameless plug for government. It's fascinating, and public service is a real thing.
I would agree with Ollie. As someone who started at the White House at 25 and had many times where I was like, they're letting me do what? There is really no other opportunity to have so much impact at such a young age. The hours are brutal, but the impact is just immeasurable. And I think that's why we similarly have been able to attract a bunch of really terrific people who will take 95% pay cuts and come into government because they know they can shape this field. They can shape the future of AI in a way that they won't be able to do otherwise. And I don't think it's a binary choice. I'm someone who was in government, was in the private sector, helped build and sold a company, and then came back into government. And I think that both experiences have been incredibly sort of mutually reinforcing for me. And I think every day in this job as I'm starting up an institute about how I help start up a company. And so all the pieces fit together, even if they might seem messy for now.
Last question for the both of you, and I'll start with you, Elizabeth. What do you see as the major challenges and opportunities in AI for the next decade, and how are your institutes preparing for it?
I think the challenge and the opportunity is in some ways the same, which is just it's moving so fast. We're seeing exponential development with each release being so much more powerful and so much more capable than what came before it. And we're seeing that in how new models like Claude 4, scoring way better on GPQA, a sort of well-known science benchmark, than even the model released before that. And so the pace is both amazing because it means we'll be able to unlock huge opportunities in AI as we think about using AI for drug discovery and development, carbon capture and storage, individualized education, weather prediction, all of the things that we really want to use AI for to solve pressing societal challenges. And that's what makes me excited. But at the same time, we've got to get the safety piece right. And that's both hard and hugely important given how fast it's moving.
I agree totally with Elizabeth. The main thing that 10 years is difficult. The main thing that strikes me, is that pace thing. I make one point about that for government and then a different point in terms of what I think comes next. So for government, exponentials are really, really hard. Government doesn't intuitively think in exponentials. And we saw that during COVID, where you go from, yes, it's 1,000 cases today, and yes, it will be 2,000 cases on Wednesday, but that is 500,000 cases in 3 weeks' time. And when we're riding an exponential, lots and lots of people in government will feel like they've got an intuitive sense of what AI was capable of because they've played with ChatGPT. GPT-4 came out a year ago. Its training run finished 6 months before that. If they didn't pay their subscription, they're using GPT 3.5. So an awful lot of people in government are kind of aware that it's an exponential and moving quickly, and their mental model is just kind of already somewhat out of date for what the systems are capable of. So that's agreeing with Elizabeth. And then my additional point is, I think that if we see systems which are capable of being used reliably as agents, agentic AI just feels like not a different ballgame, it's not a different paradigm. Those are too big as metaphors, but just like a whole new set of opportunities. There are, this is where we get our AI that does stuff for you, your lab assistants, your assistants that are helping you in the course of your life, AI that can plan and execute those plans. That is an extraordinary upside. It's also a completely novel set of threat vectors to be concerned about.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth Kelly, Ollie Ilott. Thank you for joining us today.